Good evening, my squires. Tonight's tale is written by the hand of Let Me Ask You. It is entitled Ghost. There is no suspense to my story. I'm going to tell you about the time I saw a ghost. I didn't believe in ghosts. Why should I? I had never seen a ghost, and for all that I was concerned, they were just tales to scare the gullible rubes of the world. I'm an older man now, with a respectable life, but when I was a whippersnapper, and no, that word wasn't cool either when I was young, I was a rebellious miscreant. I was dissatisfied with my parents and life in general, and thought that running away would solve my problems. Now, I'm not one to do anything half-heartedly. I got 3 of my buddies with similar life situations, and together we decided to hit the road. There was only one problem, technically 2. None of us were old enough to drive, and even if we were all too poor to afford a car. Well, the next logical step, still a car. Now, I'm not going to pretend that this was the first time that we had done this. Remember, rebellious miscreant? But those are stories for another time. We lived near the downtown area of a big city in the north. Plenty of parked cars on the street. It was too easy. We procured our vehicle to freedom and started driving south. Now, I know the following series of events sounds conveniently like the making of a horror movie, but I swear they happened. As we were driving down the freeway to freedom, a bad snowstorm started to overtake the landscape. It was hard to see down the road, but we kept on driving. We made it to a well-known small town, but of course, what good horror story would this be if the car didn't break down? We didn't have any money, we were broke down on the side of the road in a car that didn't belong to any of us, and we were in the middle of a bad snowstorm. Again, I swear this is all true. We couldn't stay in the car, or we would freeze to death. We could all see the headline in our heads. 4 juvenile delinquents freeze to death in a stolen car. Luckily, or not, one of my friends remembered that there was an old abandoned farmhouse that we passed a few miles down the road. So we all got out of the car and made our way back to that house. By this time, the snow was up to our knees as we trudged our way to the door. It was a stroke of luck that the house was abandoned, because who would let 4 random punks into their house in the middle of the night? The door was locked, so we had to kick it in to gain access to the shelter. We weren't out of the woods yet, though. We were in this house, but still had no heat. There was a pot-belly stove, so we looked around the house, and upstairs we found some insulation, wood, and other things to burn. Of course, we put those things in the stove and started the fire. We knew it was going to be a long night, so we got comfortable. My friend Joe took off his socks and placed them on the stove because they were soaking wet. All of our socks were wet, but the rest of us left ours on. This is the part where things start to feel off. Now, of the 4 of us boys, Jay lived with his mother and sisters. They were practicing witches for generations, and him being a boy, he was nothing to them, a nobody, hence why his life was the way it was. But growing up around that, you tend to pick up on certain things and have knowledge that a lot of other people do not have. We heard footsteps upstairs, but that was impossible because all of us were just up there and no one else was in the house with us. Jay looked even more uncomfortable than normal. He looked at us with all seriousness in his eyes and said that there's a ghost in the house. He said that it is an evil spirit. None of us believed him. I chalked up the noise to the house getting settled, or possibly a bum that we overlooked in our original search of the house. Jay got up and left the house. I thought that he was the biggest chicken in the world. The rest of us stayed in the house, relaxing and sitting by the fire. We could hear the occasional footsteps and bumps, but still didn't care. We were out of the cold and deep snow next to a warm fire. To this day, I wish I had the foresight to leave with Jay, but the old saying is true, hindsight is always 20/20. All three of us were enjoying the warmth of the fire when from out of nowhere, a loud bang from a door being slammed open broke the sound of the calm crackling of the fire. We all jumped. We heard footsteps again, but this time they were starting down the stairs. I, being Mr. Tough Guy, still didn't believe it was a ghost and went to investigate. I was ready to take on the bum who was coming to do us harm. I took out my lighter, walked to the stairs to see what was going on. I heard the next footstep on the stairs. I saw it. A footprint in the dust was created right before my very eyes, and the dust that flew up formed around the pant leg of the ghost. Well, I didn't have to see the next footprint to know that I wasn't staying in that spot any longer. I yelled, "Ghost!" and ran straight for the door. My two other friends knew that if something scared me so badly to make me run out into the snowstorm, that they had better follow, and fast. Joe was so scared that he didn't bother to take his socks off the stove, and he had his shoes in his hand as we were running away from the old farmhouse. We made our way back to the road. Jay had already been picked up by the police. The car that we took was reported as stolen, and him, being from out of town and walking down the road in the middle of a snowstorm, was the obvious suspect. Eventually, the rest of us were arrested for stealing the car. To tell the truth, I would rather spend time in custody of the police over ever experiencing anything like we did in that farmhouse. We were all transferred back to the city. Joe and myself were detained together in the county jail. We were left alone for a while. I saw an opening in the window and told Joe that we could escape if we climbed out. We were on the 4th floor of the building. That's probably why they didn't protect the window as they should have. We were walking on the ledge to get to freedom. That's when I saw his parents and mine. We both feared our parents more than that ghost and knew that if we escaped as we had planned, that there was no punishment from the government that would ever equal what we would face from our parents. We hurried back into the room and accepted that we were going to pay for what we had done. Jay and my other friend were sentenced to time on a youth labor farm. That type of punishment in our state was a sentence to a lifetime of crime. Another story for another time. Thanks to Joe's father, the two of us were sentenced to probation. I feared that if Joe's father hadn't sternly preached to the judge about forgiveness and loving the Lord, that we would have faced the same fate as our two other friends. Let this be a lesson to all you skeptics out there. If you hear footsteps in a previously searched abandoned house, it probably is a ghost. Sleep tight.